You know, some stories are so strange, they feel like they belong to a different world entirely. They just hang around at the edges of history, refusing to give up their secrets, and they capture our imagination for centuries. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most baffling of them all, the story of the Green Children of Woolpit.
Right in the heart of medieval England, two children just appeared, seemingly out of thin air. They were lost, they were terrified, and their skin was the color of new spring leaves. For almost 900 years, these three simple questions have echoed through time, and they form the core of a mystery that just will not go away.
Picture this, rural Suffolk, England, the 12th century. This is a world lit by fire and guided by faith. During the hustle and bustle of the harvest, some local villagers made a discovery so utterly bizarre, it would be written down by the chroniclers of the time and debated for literally generations to come. It's a story that really blurs the line between history, folklore, and the truly unknown. Now, to even begin to wrap our heads around what happened, we have to step back into the world they appeared in. This wasn't our world of science and instant information. No, this was a time of deep faith, brutal, constant conflicts, and a really powerful belief that the veil between our world and another one was perilously thin, and that it could be torn open at any moment. So this all goes down during a period known as the Anarchy, under the reign of King Stephen. And let me tell you, it was a brutal 19-year civil war that left the whole country in absolute turmoil. One chronicler famously wrote that during this time, Christ and his saints were asleep. In a tiny village like Woolpit, whose very name comes from the Old English for wolf pits, literal holes dug to trap wolves, life was tough. The world was filled with threats, both real and supernatural. To them, fairies, demons, and spirits were just as real as the lord of the manor. So, how do we even know this story happened? Well, this wasn't just some local rumor passed down over the dinner table. It was actually documented by educated men. But what's really remarkable is that our entire knowledge of this incredible event comes down to the writings of just two medieval chroniclers. They took it upon themselves to record this marvel for all of history. Okay, let's look at our sources. First, we have William of Newburgh. He was writing his History of English Affairs way up in the north. He actually admits he was skeptical at first, writing that it seemed ridiculous to believe until he was, in his words, overwhelmed by the weight of so many and such worthy witnesses. Then you've got Ralph of Coggeshall, an abbot living much closer, only about 25 miles from Woolpit, and he claims a direct source, the knight Sir Richard de Calne, the man who actually took the children into his home. So these two accounts, written completely independently, are the bedrock of this entire legend. And what's wild is that despite having different sources, the core details of their accounts are strikingly similar. So during the harvest, villagers find two kids, a brother and a sister, just wandering near one of those deep wolf pits. Everything about them is alien. Their skin has this distinct green hue. Their clothes are made of a strange, totally unfamiliar material. And when they try to speak, it's just a torrent of words nobody can understand. They're terrified, confused, and utterly alone, until they're brought to the manor of Sir Richard de Calne for safety. After their discovery, the mystery, believe it or not, only gets deeper. One of the children tragically doesn't survive for long, and that leaves his sister as the sole keeper of their secret. As she slowly adapts to this new life, she starts to learn English, and when she can finally communicate, the story she tells is more astonishing than anyone could have possibly imagined. I mean, can you just imagine the scene at Sir Richard's house? These two strange green children, sobbing, refusing every single kind of food put in front of them. Bread, meat, you name it. They're literally on the verge of starvation. Then, completely by chance, someone brings in some freshly picked broad beans from the fields. And the children's eyes just light up. They frantically try to open the stalks, and when they can't, they break down in tears. A villager shows them how to open the pods, and the kids just devour the raw beans. For months, that's the only thing they would eat. The transition to this new world was just too much for the boy. The chronicles describe him as sickly and listless. He just seemed to sink into this deep melancholy, refusing to eat much beyond those beans. He faded away and died shortly after being baptized. But his sister, she proved to be more resilient. Over time, as she started to eat other foods like bread, her green skin color gradually faded to a normal complexion. She learned the language and the customs of the village. She was given the name Agnes, and she survived. And this is where the story takes its most fantastical turn. Once she could speak English, Agnes was questioned endlessly. Where did you come from? Her answer, recorded by the chroniclers, is just haunting. She claimed they came from a place called St. Martin's Land. It was a Christian land with churches, but it was a land with no sun. She described it as a place of perpetual twilight, kind of like how the world looks right after sunset. And from her home, she said you could see a brighter land, but it was separated from them by a vast river. But how did they get here? Well, according to Agnes, she and her brother were looking after their father's livestock when they heard this loud, captivating sound, like the ringing of church bells. They followed the sound and it led them into a cavern. They wandered in darkness for a long, long time, until they suddenly emerged, blinded by the brilliant sunlight and warm air of the Woolpit fields, a world utterly unlike their own. That is an incredible story, but is it just a story? For centuries now, people have been trying to find a rational explanation for what happened at Woolpit. So let's explore 4 of the most prominent modern theories that try to ground this medieval marvel in our reality. Okay, the most scientific approach points to a medical condition. Hypochromic anemia, which was once called green sickness or chlorosis, is caused by extreme malnutrition. A severe iron deficiency can, in fact, give the skin a noticeable green pallor. So this theory suggests the children were simply lost and starving, and their skin color went back to normal once they got proper nutrition, which, you have to admit, fits the narrative perfectly. It's a really neat explanation for the green skin, but it leaves the biggest questions completely unanswered. The strange language, the bizarre clothes, and of course the girl's detailed, otherworldly story.
Another really popular theory tries to place the children historically. See, during the 12th century, a lot of immigrants from Flanders, which is modern-day Belgium, settled in England. In 1173, thousands of Flemish mercenaries were killed at the Battle of Fornham, not far from Woolpit. So this theory suggests the children were traumatized Flemish orphans, speaking a dialect the locals didn't recognize. But there's a major problem. William of Newburgh specifically dates the event to the reign of King Stephen, which ended nearly 20 years before that battle. That is a huge chronological error that's pretty hard to just ignore.
Well, what if the girl was telling the literal truth? This brings us to the most imaginative theories. In medieval folklore, caves were often seen as portals to other realms, the land of the fairies. And her description of a twilight land, it fits perfectly with those beliefs. More recently, some have even suggested the children were extraterrestrials, accidentally beamed to Earth. Now, these ideas are fascinating because they really embrace the story's strangeness, but they rely on belief rather than any actual evidence. So maybe the most complex theory is that the story isn't about real children at all. Some historians argue it's an allegory. The green children, they say, represent the alien Normans who conquered England in 1066. They show up speaking a foreign language with different customs. Over time, the girl assimilates. She loses her greenness, she learns the local language, and she marries a local man. This symbolizes the gradual merging of Norman and Anglo-Saxon cultures into a new English identity. So in this view, the story is a powerful cultural fable, not a factual report. So here we are. We have medicine, history, folklore, and literature, all trying to explain this one brief, bizarre event. But after all this time, the story's core mystery remains stubbornly intact. It just refuses to be neatly solved. And honestly, that's precisely the source of its enduring power. I mean, if we really break it down, what are we looking at? The amount of verifiable historical fact, a village named Woolpit, 2 guys who wrote about it, is tiny. The number of elements that echo common medieval folklore, like coming out of a cave into another world, that's very high. But, and this is crucial, the percentage of details that don't neatly fit any single theory, the specific description of St. Martin's Land, the raw beans, the fading green skin, that also remains remarkably high. And so we're left right back where we started, with this cascade of unanswered questions. What was their true origin? What was that strange language they spoke? Was the land of St. Martin a real, subterranean place? A traumatic memory filtered through a child's imagination? Or a total fabrication? It feels like every potential answer just opens up 5 more questions. As the historian Michal Mayday points out, this story isn't some throwaway little anecdote in these medieval texts. It's a vital part of them. The chroniclers themselves presented it as a profound wonder, a real challenge to the known order of the world. And without new evidence, which is incredibly unlikely to ever appear, it is a challenge that is, quote, bound to forever remain a mystery. So, the final, crucial question is left to us, isn't it? Do we see this as a cautionary folktale about the strange and the foreign, a garbled account of a very real, very human tragedy? Or do we allow for the possibility that for one brief moment in a 12th century field, two children genuinely crossed a threshold from a world we cannot comprehend into our own? Whatever the truth is, the Green Children of Woolpit have left a permanent mark on our culture. The story has inspired novels, poems, and plays for hundreds of years. It reminds us that history isn't just a collection of facts and dates, but also of wonders and puzzles, and that maybe, just maybe, the most compelling stories are the ones that leave us wondering. Their story really forces us to confront the limits of our own understanding. Thank you so much for joining us in this exploration of a mystery that has endured for nearly a millennium, proving that sometimes the questions are far more powerful than any answer.